Start by adding a circle. To make this a lot easier, go to Options and select Quick Effects and then Smoke. Now go to the Physics tab, which is only there if you selected Render View on the top of the screen. Now select a particle system and make sure you actually have added a particle system. Now the smoke will only spawn where there are particles. Now adjust some settings. Now you can control the smoke by adjusting the particle physics. For an explosion, you pretty much just want to turn up random for everything. Now from the drop down, select Fire and Smoke. Choosing Fire alone will also add some smoke regardless. You'll see that the cache is empty, which means you can't bake any of this. That's only because you haven't saved yet. After you save, the cache will be available, and you'll be able to render the entire thing so that it'll load faster later. I have the resolution set really low, that way it can actually run with the screen recorder, and so it doesn't take forever. Render it by hitting F12. Now switch to a frame where there's actually some stuff on the screen. You'll see that the object that projected all the smoke is still just sitting there. You'll also see that everything's really dark because there's only one light and it's behind the smoke. Then I added a backdrop so you could see the transparency of the smoke. Now uncheck emitter so the ball won't show up when you render. And you can see it isn't there. Now go into the Physics tab and hit the Free Bake button. If you don't do this, none of the changes you make will affect anything. Now I increased the resolution of the smoke and you can see the smoke is only spawned by the particles. Which means if you don't have enough particles, you'll just have lines of smoke from where the particle was at each frame. Now I bake it again so I can actually play in realish time. If you hit escape partially through a bake, the frames that I actually rendered will still be there. Now you can see that there's just smoke sitting there still. I found it interesting that Z transparency doesn't actually work with the transparency of smoke. So you have to use ray trace transparency or it will end up looking really weird like that. Ray trace takes a bit longer, but it's the only transparency that actually works with smoke in the background. Although it still looks a little bit odd, that's mostly because of the spectral lighting on the cube, makes it brighter on one side. As you can see, we still have the problem where there's only fire where the particles were. To fix this, increase the randomness of the particles and the number of particles, and then rebake. You're going to want to check high resolution smoke on your final render and turn the render size up to about 70. Although lower render qualities with high resolution smoke can actually look pretty good. Now you can see that doesn't really look like fire. That looks like kind of a lens flare kind of bloom thing. So you can go under the texture of the explosion and adjust the actual colors to make it look more fiery and explosion-y. You can also do this with the smoke, but it looks a little weird. So now it's a nice reddish explosion-y glow. You can mess with the colors as much as you want. You can make it a nice purple explosion if you really want. So you can also go under smoke effects and change stuff if you want to. If you want an object flying through the smoke, you can just animate it to go through the smoke and go into the Physics tab and check Smoke and then Collision, and then take the Animated drop-down option if you're animating it. You might want to adjust settings under the Particle tab or under the Smoke Physics tab to make it so it doesn't hit the top of the window so quickly. So you can see the box kind of hits the explosion and forces the flames outward. So now you have a box flying into an explosion. So if I turn the box completely transparent, you can see it's just kind of putting a dent right into the explosion. And you can kind of see the outline of it where it's hitting everything. In some versions of Blender, particles display as particles even if they're part of a smoke effect, so you want to put render as none. You can also add multiple emitters inside the same domain, which is what the box is called. And then I set one of them as smoke only and the other two as fire, and none of them use particle systems, so they're just two boxes that are sitting on fire and one that's sitting just smoking. Pretty much do whatever you want. There's also the dissolve checkbox, makes the smoke dissipate eventually so it's not just flying up all the way to the roof. And then you can adjust the dissolve time to make it dissolve slower or faster. The settings above dissolve pretty much all interact with how fast the smoke rises.